Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first day of reading from the text of the Yoga Vasistha. If you missed it, a couple of other videos I uploaded on a bit of background, and then today we're going to dive in. We'll start with a prayer. Om Sahana Navatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vivishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. All right, thank you for joining and following along. This is just such a special text. I'm really grateful to be here. My goal is to be here each day and share a little bit from this reading. I'm not sure if we went over it in the last video, so I wanted to talk a little bit about Swami Jyotirmayananda. He's one of the few remaining disciples of Swami Shivananda. He resides in Florida, if that is correct. I'm pretty sure this is. And he was the one that put this book together. We went a little bit over in the last video about how special and rare this book is. And so if you missed that, go ahead and watch that. But today we will start. I want to introduce Swami Lalitananda. He wrote an introduction to her and a thank you to her, which I think is valuable to acknowledge her. This is Swami Lalitananda. So he dedicates this book to her. He says, I dedicate this book to Sri Swami Lalitananda, the Vice President of Yoga Research Foundation, who is the illustrious author of Yoga and Life, editor of my magazine, International Yoga Guide, as well as the poet-composer of Yoga Mystic Songs for Meditation in 3 volumes. It was the Yoga, dispassion, and intense aspiration of Sri Swami Lalitananda that resulted in my giving the complete series of lectures on Yoga Vasistha, as well as the writing of this present book. The vast work of promoting my teachings and works in the West has been carried on untiringly with an unassuming zeal and utter self-effacement by this noble sannyasin for over 15 years. The spiritual world will ever remain deeply indebted to her for the formation and existence of the mighty organization, Yoga Research Foundation, which is a fountain source of light and wisdom for spiritual aspirants all over the world. May God bless her abundantly. Swami Jyotirmayananda. And so I thought that was really beautiful to share before we start here. So we're forming this as a study group. So just to acknowledge that I am not a scholar. I do not have a very strong background in the inner workings of the mythologies here, the text here. I'm just going to read, essentially. But from my understanding, this is it. This is the spiritual component of the Ramayana, and Rama comes to sage Vasistha and offers or asks for his advice. And so this is the book. It says Sage Vasistha imparts spiritual wisdom to Sri Rama. Adorations to Sage Vasistha. According to Brahman, the giver of supreme bliss, the embodiment of pure consciousness, beyond the pairs of opposites, vast like the ether, knowable by the meditation upon the great utterance, thou art that. Adorations to Sage Vasistha, who is indeed Brahman, one without a second, eternal, pure, immutable, the witnessing self abiding in all beings, beyond the changes and modifications of nature. All right. So let me see what our goals are for today. All right. So I think that we'll try and get through this introduction, and then we'll start on the readings tomorrow. Okay, and again, I am not a scholar, and so please bear with me through my attempts at
pronouncing Sanskrit here. So the introduction to the Yoga Vasistha. The Yoga Vasistha Maharamayana, one of the greatest of all Hindu scriptures, is virtually unknown in the West due to the scarcity of its English translations. This vast work of approximately 32,000 verses, 64,000 lines, supplement the epic poem, the Ramayana, which is more popularly known throughout India and the world. In the Balakanda section of the Ramayana, it is stated that Sri Rama was given spiritual instructions by sage Vasistha. Yoga Vasistha is that teaching. Whereas the Ramayana describes the epic life and adventures of Sri Rama, the Yoga Vasistha presents his inner realization in detail for those who wish to intensify their spiritual life and deepen their understanding. The Yoga Vasistha is also known by the following names: Maharamayana, Uttar Ramayana, Arsha Ramayana, Yana Vasistha, Vasistha Ramayana, and Vasistha. Whatever you choose to call it, it is the earliest detailed work of Yoga Vedanta and gives a magnificently detailed exposition of the subtleties and insights of that philosophy with a majestic sweep that has never been equaled in any metaphysical work since. It was written by the great poet Valmiki, probably about 500 BC, although maybe much earlier, in the form of dialogue between sage Vasistha and his pupil, the young prince Rama. Every kind of exposition is employed in its sequence: didactic instruction, answers to doubts, parables, and stories within stories. Many key points of this metaphysical instruction are touched upon over and over again, with increasingly deeper meanings. Therefore, the work appears to move in vast spirals, culminating in the self-realization of Sri Rama. The interlocking system of stories within stories enhances the vision of worlds within worlds and of the infinitely complex world of the mind, itself arising within the cosmic mind. In the opening stage, Sri Rama relates his growing awareness of the transiency of life and of all worldly aims. A great Vairagya, dispassion, arises, which later develops into mumukshutva, longing for spiritual emancipation. Subsequently, he is fully enlightened by sage Vasistha. In the process, every aspect of yogic and Vedantic teaching is beautifully and fully developed. Yoga Vasistha is divided into the following 6 chapters. And I'll go on to read this, but essentially it's the same story as Joseph Campbell calls it the hero's journey. In the Bhagavad Gita, we know Arjuna goes and he says he's not going to fight, and so this is his dispassion, and then it tells his story through to self-realization, and this is the same story in a different story. So the first section is Vairagya Prakarana, dispassion. At sage Vasistha's request, Sri Rama describes the case of his mind's unusual melancholy state. He elaborates upon the transiency, essencelessness, and changing nature of all objects in this world. These vivid descriptions of the vanity of all worldly pleasures and of the emptiness of all worldly glories are meant to promote Vairagya, dispassion, which is the first basic requirement for treading the path of wisdom that leads to self-realization. Here's Swami Jyotirmayananda. The second section is the aspiration for self-realization. This section details upon the qualifications that are necessary before one can seek immortality. One should not rely on destiny, but rather gain an insight into the fact that the self in him is the ceaseless source of all energy and creativity. And this is self with a capital S. He should befriend one of the 4 gatekeepers of liberation: serenity, contentment, spiritual inquiry, and good association. With the help of that one gatekeeper, he will automatically befriend the other 3, and finally enter into the blessed palace of liberation. The third section is the origin of the world process. I think in the volumes we'll be reading, sections 1, 2, and 3 will be volume 1, sections 4, 5, and 6 will be volume 2. All right, Third section, the origin of the world process. Utpatti Prakarana is an exposition on how the world evolved from the absolute and is ever rooted in the absolute. In fact, the world is an appearance sustained by the limitations of the mind. When these limitations are overcome by intuitive wisdom, it becomes non-existent. Section 4 is the sustaining reality of the self. This section explains how an aspirant, having attained knowledge, can abide in Brahman, even though the world continues to appear. The underlying reality behind the ego sense in man is the absolute. When the illusion of duality is negated by wisdom, a yogi lives and sports in Brahman. The self is realized as the creator as well as the enjoyer of the universe. Section 5 is quintessence of the mind. Herein, Yoga Vasistha deals with the stupendous experience of peace that results from spiritual enlightenment. The characteristics of a self-realized sage are described in the glowing terms. This section also gives instructions for the removal of ahamkara, or egoism, for the promotion of equal vision, and for the attainment of absolute detachment from the world process. Section 6 is liberation. This voluminous section is divided into two parts. In the first, entitled Purva Bhaga, the yogi discovers his essential nature. He realizes his true identity as Brahman, the underlying reality behind all individual beings, as well as the universe. He becomes all that is. In this section, Sri Rama enters into divine ecstasy. In the second part, Uttara Bhaga, Yoga Vasistha presents the beatific vision of nirvana, or liberation, which is the extinction of all cravings. Sage Vasistha describes his own personal experiences of samadhi and of the majestic vision of the entire universe being nothing but the self. In conclusion, Sri Rama attained enlightenment, but instead of turning away from practical duties of the world, he prepared himself to perform them, even as great divinities who create, sustain, and destroy the world with a spirit of absolute detachment. So that is our conclusion for today. I just love it because it seems to be everyone's confusion is that we'll give up the world, we'll renounce the world, and then the final state of this is liberation, and he just goes back to act in the world. But the only thing that's changed is his mind. This liberation from let's read it again because I'm not sure I will say it right. With a spirit of absolute detachment. That's how he acts in the world. Let's finish here with another prayer. Om Purnamidam Purnamidam Purnamudashate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Peace Peace Peace. Jai to all the masters of all the traditions. Jai to Swami Shivananda. Jai to Swami Vishnudevananda. And Jai to Swami Jyotirmayananda, who brought us this translation. Have a lovely day.